Good morning. It is Sunday, October 25th, 2020. You can now relax and be informed. Here is your daily bite of news. First, an update on some good news. Bug specialists from the Washington State Department of Agriculture successfully vacuumed up the nest of so-called murder hornets in Washington State on Saturday, capping a months-long effort to find and remove the invasive species. Along with Mark Short, the Vice President's Chief of Staff, 3 additional staff members and a Mike Pence advisor have also tested positive for COVID-19. Vice President Pence and Mrs. Pence both tested negative for COVID-19 and remain in good health. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched 60 more Starlink internet relay satellites on Saturday, boosting the total number launched to date to 895, as the company builds out a planned constellation designed to provide global high-speed broadband service. SpaceX Starlink operation has regulatory approval to launch more than 12,000 of the small satellites in multiple orbital planes, providing commercial users with line of sight, access to space-based broadband signal from any point on Earth. The Trump administration has relaunched long-delayed plans to conduct a seismic survey in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska as a prelude to drilling for oil there. The Bureau of Land Management on Friday released a proposal to begin a seismic survey in December that would look for underground signs of oil reserves over more than 500,000 acres on the east side of the refuge's coastal plain. The Bureau said it would accept public comments on the plan, which was proposed by an Alaska Native Village Corporation, for 14 days before deciding whether to issue permits. Environmental and conservation groups in Alaska immediately criticized the action, saying it would permanently harm the delicate Arctic tundra and affect polar bears and other wildlife of that remote, pristine part of the United States. They also said that the rapid time frame meant that a thorough environmental review would not be possible. Environmental groups have filed suit to stop the sale, and so far the lease sales have not occurred. Environmental groups and scientists who study polar bears have been concerned that the seismic equipment needed could disturb or even crush polar bear dens, which are the winter homes of females and their newborn cubs. The 1002 area is thought to overlie geological formations that might hold billions of barrels of oil, but that assessment is based largely on the only seismic survey ever conducted there in the 1980s. The new proposal by the Kativik Inupiat Corporation would use improved technology that can produce 3-dimensional images of underground formations. It would involve deploying heavy trucks across the tundra in a grid pattern, as well as supplies and mobile living quarters for 180 workers. The proposal calls for the work to be done by a contractor, SAE Exploration, a Houston-based company. Since 2018, SAE Exploration has declared bankruptcy, and earlier this month the company and its executives were accused by the Securities and Exchange Commission of conducting a multi-year accounting fraud that inflated the company's revenue. When Puerto Ricans go to the polls on November 3rd to elect their governor, they'll also be asked if they want to be the 51st star on the American flag. The statehood referendum in the bankrupt territory of 3.2 million people is non-binding, and although this is the 6th time the issue has been on the ballot, boosters think this time it will be different if the political stars align. If voters say yes to statehood, as they did in 2012 and 2017, and the pro-statehood candidate Pedro Pierluisi wins, and the Democrats take control of the U.S. Congress, the Caribbean island might have a shot at becoming a state. If so, the great state of Puerto Rico would be eligible for 2 seats in the U.S. Senate and 5 in the House of Representatives. It is thought that Puerto Rico will be a swing state or a battleground state. With a poverty rate of 43%, Puerto Rico would be the poorest U.S. state, far behind Mississippi at 20%. Russia has granted U.S. whistleblower Edward Snowden permanent residency rights, his lawyer said on Thursday, a step towards Russian citizenship if he wants it. Snowden, age 37, fled the United States and was given asylum in Russia after leaking secret files in 2013 that revealed vast domestic and international surveillance operations carried out by the U.S. National Security Agency where he was a contractor. U.S. authorities have for years wanted Snowden returned to the United States decades to face a criminal trial on espionage charges brought in 2013. U.S. President Donald Trump floated the idea in August that he was considering a pardon for Snowden, but hasn't followed through with it. A North Carolina man, 19-year-old Alexander Hill Treisman, was found with a van filled with guns and explosives and had been researching how to kill Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, prosecutors said. A search of his vehicle revealed over $500,000 in cash, as well as books about bomb making, improvised weapons, and thoughts on homicide and interest in mass killings. He has been detained solely on child pornography charges at this point. Prosecutors offered a list of evidence as reasons why he should not be given bail. It included research into Joe Biden's home and a to-do list ending in the word execute. He is currently being held without bail at the Cabarrus County Jail. On Friday, after decades of rumors and investigations, Michael Mirren, age 74, was arrested on human trafficking, racketeering, and related charges. He's expected to be arraigned in Scioto County Common Pleas Court on Monday. For more than 15 years, many women who experienced trauma stepped forward to level their allegations that Mirren, a former Portsmouth, Ohio city councilman and still practicing attorney, trapped them in a cycle of drug abuse and sexual servitude. Here's what the women alleged. Mirren, as a prominent attorney, would represent women facing drug charges. The lawyer promised them lenient sentences, but there was a catch. The women had to agree to have sex for money. They told their stories to agents with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Agents linked Mirren to 27 women who worked for him as prostitutes, including 2 believed to have been met with foul play. One woman was dead with multiple traumas in 2013, while another, Megan Lancaster, has been missing since April of that year. The 18 felony charges Mirren faces include human trafficking and compelling prostitution. If convicted of all charges, he faces more than 70 years in prison. George Gonzalez Zuniga, age 23, died in his family home this past July, paralyzed from the neck down and unable to breathe on his own after 3 deputies brutally arrested him for intoxication and violating pandemic curfews in Texas. After trying to flee from officers but not fighting them once caught, witnesses say he was tased, tripped, punched, and had his neck and back knelt on before being pushed chest first into a patrol car. Once they arrived at the precinct, Mr. Gonzalez would not or could not stand on his own, and officers involved read it as being uncooperative and put him in restraints. 20 hours later, a trained medic found him lying motionless on the detox cell's concrete, and later hospital doctors diagnosed a crushed vertebra and a body temperature of 82.4 degrees. He spent the next several weeks on a ventilator and died on July 15th. On August 20th, the Hidalgo County District Attorney's Office sought manslaughter charges against the 3 deputies who conducted the arrest, but the grand jury came back with a decision on the same day to have no charges. George Gonzalez Zuniga's death after a brutal arrest prompted protests that are rare in a region where undocumented immigrants often prefer to stay silent. His family has begun a social media campaign to bring attention to brother's death and police brutality. Venezuelan opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez has fled the Spanish ambassador's residence in Caracas and entered Colombia. Lopez, a political prisoner since 2014, had been taking refuge there since April of late year, following a botched uprising against President Nicolas Maduro alongside National Assembly head Juan Guaido. His final destination will be Madrid, where his wife and children live since last year, according to 2 people. Lopez's departure will deliver a blow to an already weakened opposition, which under Guaido's stewardship has failed to deliver the quick transition promised at the start of 2019. While the U.S. and many other countries now consider Guaido to be the country's legitimate president, an influential Trump administration official secretly met with a representative of Venezuela's regime in Mexico City in September to try to negotiate Maduro's departure from power. 20 years after the $100 billion chocolate industry pledged to tackle child labor in cocoa-growing communities, a new report sponsored by the U.S. Department of Labor government reveals that the problem has worsened by 30% in the past decade. The report from the University of Chicago researchers found that 1.56 million children in Ghana and the Ivory Coast were working in the industry. Most of them were working in hazardous conditions, defined by working night shifts, clearing land, carrying heavy loads, and using sharp tools. Major chocolate manufacturers, including Nestle and Mars, signed an agreement with members of U.S. Congress in 2001 to end child labor on cocoa farms in West Africa. In 2010, the same companies vowed to cut 70% of the worst forms of child labor by 2020. But the chocolate industry has failed to resolve this issue. Karim Kaisia, one of the authors of the report, says that support from big brands and industry organizations needs to be scaled up. Targets to reduce child labor were set without fully understanding the complexity and scale of a challenge heavily associated with poverty in rural Africa and did not anticipate the significant increase in cocoa production over the past decade. Several thousand people ransacked and looted a government food warehouse in central Nigeria on Saturday, in the latest in 2 weeks of protests and unrest sweeping over Africa's populous country. After pillaging hit Lagos in the country's southwest, crowds of people raided a huge warehouse in Jos that was storing supplies destined for distribution during lockdowns imposed to control the virus pandemic. Videos on social media showed thousands of people in Jos carrying away sacks of cereal, rice, and bags of pasta. So during the lockdown, they were just hiding the food. I wonder about the kind of government we have, said Mafag Pam, who lives in Jos. Many people have died from hunger. They hid this food since the lockdown. By now, they should have shared it. Relative calm prevailed Saturday in Lagos, where a strict curfew imposed on Tuesday in the biggest city was eased as a week of violence also subsided. Peaceful demonstrations against police brutality erupted in Nigeria on October and quickly spiraled into one of the biggest challenges to the ruling elite. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has called for an end to the protests and warned demonstrators not to undermine national security. In Poland on Friday, 15,000 people protested following a court ruling that imposes a near-total ban on abortions. Carrying banners that read "Women's Strike," and demonstrators defied tight coronavirus restrictions in the capital of Warsaw. They gathered near the house of Jarosław Kaczyński, the ruling Nationalist Law and Justice Party leader. For the second night running, police in riot gear blocked protesters from reaching his property. More protests were planned for Monday, even though restrictions on public gatherings will go down to 5 people. The court announced on Thursday that abortions due to fatal defects were unconstitutional, ending the most common of the few legal grounds for abortions. Well, that will do for our news for today. If you would like to read up on our topics, please see our description below for sources. Subscribe to receive a daily news update. Thanks for listening. Be relaxed, be informed, be connected.